Okay, we are getting absolutely destroyed by the PS2. We need to think of something new to get us back on top. Wait, what about a handheld console that you can play on the go, but then you plug it into a dock and then it's a home console on your TV? No, that's stupid. Nobody, who's gonna buy that? Seriously, come on. We need something that just gives people a little bit more, like, I don't know, what if we took the Game Boy Advance, but then just like gave it another screen or something? I don't know. The Nintendo DS is one of the most popular devices ever made. It sold over 154 million units around the world, so it 100% made its mark on technology. And if you grew up with this thing, or you bought it even as an adult, it made dual screens feel normal. Like, this wasn't just some gimmick at the time. It felt viable, and like the future of all technology would look like this thing. But instead of a dual screen revolution, the idea kinda just... The 3DS tried its best to keep this dual screen legacy alive, but once Nintendo had abandoned it, everybody else pretty much followed, and this beautiful form factor went into a deep, long hibernation. And it finally just woke up. The dual screen resurgence is upon us, ladies and gentlemen. DS and 3DS fans all over the world are basically rejoicing right now in the long-awaited return of this form factor, and we've got two devices here that are about to do all of the explaining and catapult us back into the golden age of dual screen handhelds. These are the RG DS and then, of course, the AYN Thor. They're the first dual screen handhelds in years that normal people can actually afford to purchase. And the best part about these devices for me personally isn't even the hardware itself, but the fact that they serve as just a blinding reminder to everybody just how great the dual screen form factor truly is and was back in 2004. Dual screens do more than just give you a mild case of ADHD. This setup right here enabled developers to give you a genuinely unique experience, and one that was underappreciated at the time, especially now that everything is just one big 16:9 rectangle. On the surface, having an extra screen here on the bottom does feel like a massive gimmick, like, wow, instead of one screen, now we've got two. Take that, PSP, you single screen f. But if you dive deeper into the DS catalog, you will quickly realize that this form factor offers way more than just a cheap trick. Developers had a chance to show an abundance of information now that we've got this extra screen real estate, whether that be on the bottom or the top. Just a simple addition of one screen can give you so many more options on what to convey and how to convey it to the user. The most obvious feature that was used from almost every single video game was to put a map or some type of menu UI on the extra screen. And even though it's super basic, it just kind of seems like they're throwing information down there because they have to, this ended up being so much more useful than it leads on to be. Especially now that every single game is just like a massive open world with like nothing going on, and you're constantly opening up the menu to see where you are. Like, you were supposed to turn left like 4 blocks ago to get to Limgrave, and then now somehow you're in Mexico. It doesn't even make any sense. You barely would have to pause the game. Equipping items felt seamless. Accessing any features you needed was right there on the extra screen, and knowing your location at all times on the map added to the level of immersion. Animal Crossing is the first thing I think of when it comes to just simple but effective dual screen gaming. You've got the map always displaying for you at the bottom alongside really easy access to your inventory with the touch controls. And while it isn't a massive reason, I still believe this adds to why so many people prefer something like New Leaf or Wild World in comparison to the Switch version of Animal Crossing. Zelda games are some of the lowest hanging fruit, but great examples too, because the map is so important and pivotal to the gameplay that constantly having it up while still being able to play inside of the game not only adds to, like I said, the immersion, but it's just so useful here. But one of my favorite things about this this extra screen is its ability to add context. When Link is salvaging for treasure here on the DS, it doesn't just like show you this bottom screen where you're searching for gold and looking for rupees. It also gives you a top screen animation that is circling around the boat and showing you what's happening in real time, giving you a new, unique perspective that otherwise wouldn't have been there. Having these little details and extra perspectives gave me so much more context on what was happening, and it allowed me to feel even more like I was inside of my video game. At the end of the day, these games are about stories, and having multiple ways to view the same story can help you understand it so much more. Developers also took this as a challenge on how and what more they could convey with two screens and different perspectives, and I can't help but think about Bowser's Inside Story. If you've played this game before, then you know that Mario and Luigi get literally stuck inside of Bowser's body. And what did the developers do to convey this? Well, on the top screen, you've got the perspective of Bowser, and you can see his body, walk around, play with him even using the controls. And then on the bottom screen, that's where your Mario and Luigi literally stuck inside of the body of Bowser. I don't know who came up with this, but I remember playing this as a kid, and it felt as though my DS was like somehow a part of the story itself and wasn't just a piece of hardware displaying the story. I was instead like literally involved in it. I'm telling you, man, this is why so many people love the uniqueness of DS games. This is such a crazy idea, and if I'm being honest here, I don't know if anybody in the comments is willing, but if a few of you guys could like go inside of my body and then kind of go to the lower part and smooth out some of the hemorrhoids that I've got going on, that would be so much relief for me. Okay, that's the second time I've mentioned my hemorrhoids in the past two videos. I'm sorry. Another game that I've never played myself, but I hear endless amounts of praise for is The World Ends With You. From my understanding, and I've just been watching like some gameplay footage of this game, you control two different characters. You've got one on the top screen that you use the D-pad to control, and then on the bottom screen, it's a separate character, and you use the touch controls to navigate this dude. And it just... what were they smoking in 2007, dude? Square Enix was on something. The gameplay looks like a mess, but I kind of want to try this out. I've never even played this. Is this really like as good as they say? The dual screen experience did continue on into the 3DS, but just like the form factor itself, things kind of started to die in this era. For whatever reason, it was a lot harder to find examples, even from my memory, of games that utilized both screens really well. Most of the 3DS library just kind of threw the map or extra features on the bottom, which is still really nice, like don't get me wrong, but I noticed a lot of less experimentation within this era of Nintendo games. I think the most memorable one for me was Kid Icarus Uprising, where you're controlling and aiming using the bottom screen, and then you've also got dialogue of characters showing up down there while you're fighting off enemies at the top. Dude, this is probably what gave everybody ADHD as a kid. What is this, dude? It was so easy for me to love this form factor because I was like 8 years old when I first got it, so my brain was so smooth you could write a tech deck on it, dude. Like my daily routine when I was 8 years old consisted of me like snorting Fritos crumbs and then like pounding 8 Capri Suns. And then I don't know, yelling at my grandma that I named my chimchar after her. I don't know. But even at that age, I understood the simple math that 2 is greater than 1. And Nintendo just freaking abandoned this format for whatever reason. I think they're scarred from the Wii U. This was like the first, I guess, attempt to bring some type of dual screen innovation into the 16:9 rectangle chaos that we've been stuck in. And I know Nintendo gets a lot of flack for the Wii U, but if you were a sorry sap just like me who owned a Wii U back in the day instead of getting, you know, one of the nicer consoles, you would understand. You know, as much as the Wii U sucked, there was a lot of potential here. Unfortunately, Nintendo or any third-party developers never doubled down too much on the use and the extension of the gamepad as much as it's hated. I think that the gamepad, when you incorporated it well into the ecosystem of whatever game you were playing, it is like no other experience, I'm telling you, and if you want proof, then just play Nintendo Land. This game will show you the greatness of the Wii U gamepad.
I'm getting on him. There you go.
There were rumors that the Switch 2 C button was going to be like a cast button. I don't know if you guys heard about that, but you know, you could stream or put the main display on the TV, and then on the handheld itself, you could get the second screen. This is such a good idea, and I was so hyped about this when I heard about it. And instead, we just got like the Kroger version of Discord because it's a freaking chat button. The last thing I want to show on screen is just this Reddit post that I've shown before of this guy playing Wind Waker with like HD mods and texture packs. I believe it's the GameCube version. And then he's also streaming to his retro handheld, which is like the Tinkle Tuner or whatever, and he's got extra information on that screen itself. And I'm telling you, man, how freaking sick is this? Even though Nintendo have seemingly abandoned this two screens ideology, I hope that after this long yap session, you could understand that two screens, it provides something special. And as we enter into 2026 together, it feels a little bit more reminiscent of 2011 whenever the initial 3DS dropped, because we've got some new affordable dual screen devices as options now in the market. Okay, I'm in the middle of editing this right now, and I keep saying the word like affordable, and normal people can buy this handheld now. And I just want to make it clear, like, this thing is still a luxury item and it is expensive, okay? I'd say these are the first devices that are like within reach, if that makes sense. All of this hype though really took off and exploded with this guy here on the left, the AYN Thor. This thing dropped in late 2025, and I'm telling you, dude, within like a couple of months, this thing became everybody's like #1 handheld over the past year. If you watch anybody's top 5 handhelds of the year or anything like that, the AYN Thor is either near the top or it is the #1 spot. I've already made a bunch of videos specifically focusing on the AYN Thor itself, and you can obviously tell that I'm a big fan of the physical hardware itself, but what I also see behind just the exterior and a great modern 3DS shell here is the movement that the AYN Thor has created within the handheld space. The Thor has rekindled so much love for dual screen form factors, and it's also proven that this entire setup can be pushed even further. Emulating DS and 3DS games is one thing, but once you start multitasking, like watching YouTube or entertainment on the bottom screen, or having game guides up there, or just simply browsing the web as an option while playing video games, makes you think that, wait, hold on a second, maybe the Wii U was onto something. Maybe this thing failed because it came out at the wrong time. Nowadays, you know, Netflix shows are prioritizing making content that, you know, is supposed to be watched while you're on your phone. So here's the Wii U, and just maybe we could watch TikTok on the gamepad and then play the game on the main screen. Beyond just brain rot though, I've seen a lot of really cool and unique use cases for the Thor and dual screens in general on an Android device. You can read while playing music on the second screen, or have like a PowerPoint up with notes on the bottom. And I also saw this Reddit post of some dude playing video games while monitoring his child on the bottom, which I think this guy wins. This is the greatest use I have seen so far. Most of these use cases are really stupid. I'm not saying that you should just walk into work with an AYN Thor and present off of it, but it's hard to, you know, not look at all of the experimentation and possibilities that are at your disposal because of the added screen. The AYN Thor arrived a couple of months ago, and this is what started the explosion within the dual screen handheld market, but there has been a second impact with the RG DS. Anbernic sent me this thing a long time ago, and when I first got it and used it, I was kind of just like, my first impression of this thing, that it was just a disaster, because when it first released, it was. The shell and the skeleton of this device are gorgeous. Just like the Thor, I don't know how you would make a better looking modern DS clone. It's beautiful and just as nice to hold. It's roughly the same size of a DSi XL, which you all know I am a huge fan of. So this thing mimicking that is really nostalgic for me, and also a great move from Anbernic. I think if they went with like a smaller DS Lite size, it would have been a little bit rougher. Soft clicky buttons, and then big 4-inch IPS screens that aren't the most beautiful colors I've ever seen, but they do get the job done at this price point. Nostalgic color options on the hardware, and this one right here is like the black and red DS Lite inspired one. Surprisingly, I enjoy the comfort more on the RG DS than the original DSi XL, which kind of feels like insane to me for saying that, but the main reason for this is because the buttons on the RG DS are squeezed and pushed a little bit higher up. I don't have tiny hands anymore, so my thumbs have to bend down a little bit just to rest on the D-pad and the face buttons, and that's not the case on the RG DS. They can comfortably just stay fully extended on this, clone of the original. I think Anbernic did this by accident too, because they had to make room for these ugly and cheap feeling thumbsticks, which on the outside do look kind of nice. They make the DS itself look a bit more modern because it has thumbsticks, but they don't feel that great, and it's probably the worst part about the hardware itself. That, in addition to these clicky shoulder buttons, and the D-pad isn't like the best D-pad. I actually was a little bit disappointed. It's kind of a stiffer D-pad. It's not bad, but I'm being nitpicky at this point. I still think that the exterior, even with a couple of flaws here and there, because it's more comfortable, is a pretty great experience. And at the end of the day, it's hard to not think that Anbernic knocked it out of the park with this design. When we shift our attention to the internals now of the device, that's where it gets a little messy. When this thing launched, Anbernic totally botched the software, and there's this weird refresh rate issue on the top and bottom panel that just led to a bunch of lag and sync issues with the top and bottom screen, but I won't harp too much on this because it has been fixed at this point. Anbernic have sent out like an update, a software update that does sync up the screens, I believe, within like 1 frame of lag, which you're not going to notice. But there is another internal issue that Anbernic cannot fix with a software update, and that's just the plain old fact that this thing is super underpowered. It barely touches DS emulation, but it does get the job done, which, to Anbernic's credit, they probably wanted this thing to be as cheap as possible while still accomplishing DS emulation. So we got that, but you can't run Melon DS. You're forced to use Drastic, which, this is definitely in the weeds at this point, but I would much rather have Melon DS because it's a lot more updated and easier to use. Drastic to me kind of sucks, but that's my opinion. And the last weird issue that doesn't make sense is the screen resolution. This isn't a proper 2 to 3 times upscaling. It's 640 by 480, which means it's like 2.5 times upscaling. So you're gonna have to use a shader inside of Drastic to smooth out the pixels, which can cause a little bit of a blurriness effect. I don't think most people will notice it, but it's still just weird, and I 100% prefer the sharp look of the pixels on the DSi XL in comparison to the RG DS, which is pretty disappointing to me personally, as somebody who's like obsessed with the way that sprites look on the DS. And with all these issues spread out on the table, I still am a bit confused on how to feel about this. Like, I do think it does a good job of accomplishing what it's a bare minimum supposed to do. Like, you can play DS games, but it's not a fun, smooth experience for me. Like, running Android on this thing is like helping my grandma get to her seat at the movie theaters, bro. You gotta have some patience if you want to see this thing shine. The two main things this thing has going for it is the fact that it's got a fantastic exterior shell, and then you can fast forward, which if you play a lot of RPGs like Pokemon or JRPGs and stuff like that, fast forwarding could be a huge improvement to you. That's way more important than anything else, so there's always that to consider. I'm not super crazy on this thing. I don't know. I think that I would still definitely pick up the OG hardware, but at the end of the day, it really depends on your needs and what you want. But this is just so cool that we even have this option to begin with, because we didn't know how to play DS before via emulation. It really wasn't even on the table, and this is giving a lot of people a unique option, although it's not the best option, and I'm curious to see if they iterate on this in the future, which I definitely think we'll see another DS version. To me, these devices just makes a really good argument in today's day and age that the dual screen format was never truly meant to be abandoned. And I'd love to sit here and tell you that these Chinese products are going to change the world and all of gaming will now bow down to the amazingness that is 2 screens. But that's probably not going to happen, even though I think it is redefining a lot of the retro handheld space and making waves for nostalgic purposes. But like, can you imagine a world where Sony, Nintendo, or Valve make another dual screen handheld? I would lose my marbles, bro. And I would hope that it would be Valve out of those 3 making some type of dual screen, because Sony or Nintendo would probably charge you a subscription to use the second screen. Oh yeah, and I forgot about Xbox in the corner over here, but no, you stay in that corner until you fix Windows. Violet, that's what we show, not private. Better keep to yourself, stay silent.
If it come to the wealth, get violent. Start riots, violent. This why my money, my outlet.